Now you can. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on the role of open universities in transforming higher education. You know that open universities have been in existence ever since the world's first open university started operations in South Africa. It's University of South Africa, which also had very distinguished alumnus like Nelson Mandela. And after that, open universities started in the UK and then the rest of the world. Today, the highest number of open universities are in Asia, primarily China, and India has 19 open universities. So these became an opportunity for people to democratize higher education and increase access. We know that for any country to achieve sustainable development, they must have at least 40 to 50% participation in higher education. And this is not possible through brick and mortar institutions. So open universities have always played a big role in expanding access to higher education at lower costs and of comparable quality and comparable outcomes. There are any number of researches to show that. And the cost is also much lower, so if policymakers are looking for opportunities to save money, this is a very good opportunity. In the past, open universities were always looking at campus universities. You know, they wanted to be like campus universities, so they wanted to copy what campus institutions were doing. But if you also look at open universities, they were a bit visionary because they wanted to provide lifelong learning opportunities for all. If you look at the mission statements of many open universities, you'll find that lifelong learning is central to their mission. The other visionary thing about open universities was their central agenda was social justice, equity, inclusion, and they did provide opportunities for persons with disabilities and persons in remote regions, marginalized communities, and so on, with access to higher education. So basically, distance education threw open the ivory towers of higher education. So today we are talking about how open universities can contribute to the transformation of higher education. We know that during the pandemic, everybody had to pivot to emergency remote learning, but emergency remote learning was not distance education. People did whatever they could to try and keep, learning going somehow or the other. For example, in India, there was a parking lot where children were sitting on sacks and there were loudspeakers all around where the teacher was giving lessons. Not an ideal situation, but at least something was happening. Parents and siblings provided a lot of education to whoever was at home with whatever level of quality. But people tried different methods, people tried very creative methods. But distance education has certain things that we can learn from distance education. One is that they're very good with learner support. They're very good with blended approaches. They're very good with building the capacity of teachers in pedagogy so that they can teach well. So today we have a very distinguished international panel. I'll first introduce everyone and then invite them one by one in that order. We have Tao Zhan, Director of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education in Moscow. And before joining UNESCO, he served as the president of Jilin University and president of Shandong University in China. And of course, Mr. Zhan has extensive experiences in mathematical research, educational administration, and ICT in education. Then we go to Shanghai. Professor Wong is the vice president of Shanghai Open University. Very distinguished career in adult education, lifelong learning, ICT and education, and the credit bank system, and mutual recognition of qualifications in China, building systems around that. Then we come to India, Professor Santosh Panda. I hope everybody is online. Will be Will we see them at some point? He's a professor of distance education since 1997. He's a professor of distance education at the Indira Gandhi National Open University, a very well-known scholar in distance learning, researcher. Professor Abdullah Adamu is the former Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria. And he's helping with developing education, not just in Nigeria, but also in West African countries. So I hope you can hear me, Professor Adamu. And then we have Professor Veronica Mackay, professor at the University of South Africa, and her research interests include gender and development issues, adult learning and literacy, and second language teaching. And then, of course, we have Professor Joseph Duarte, who holds a doctorate in pedagogy, which, as we know, is very important. He's from the Open University of Catalonia and the president of Digital Learning Europe. And then we have two rapporteurs. One is in Moscow. Svetlana Knayazeva is from UNESCO IITE, Chief of Unit of Digital Pedagogy and Learning Materials in Russia. And my own colleague, Dr. Sanjay Mishra. He's one of the leading scholars in open distance and online learning. Right now, he's just probably arrived in Seychelles, so he's taking the call from there. And they'll be helping us with any questions if the audience wants to ask, of the invisible audience online. So with that, let me invite Tao Zhan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Asha Kanwar, for the introduction. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Distinguished panelists and participants, both online and on-site. Hello, greetings from UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education based in Moscow. I warmly welcome all speakers and participants from different regions of the world. I just want to say UNESCO IITE is very delighted to collaborate with Commonwealth of Learning for co-organizing this session on the World Higher Education Conference 2022. Commonwealth of Learning, who is a close collaborative partner with UNESCO and a special partner with UNESCO IITE, with Professor Asha as IITE's Governing Board Vice Chair. I'd like to thank Professor Asha for her initial idea and excellent design of this session, focusing on the unique role of open universities in transforming higher education. I'd like to thank our panelists from Africa, Asia, and Europe for joining us and contributing to this session at this very challenging and difficult time. We are expecting brilliant ideas, innovative experience, and inspiring discussion from you. And my thanks also to Dr. Sanjaya from CO and my colleague, Dr. Svetlana, who have been working on all the technical details together with UNESCO headquarters to make this session ready and take place today. Open education and open university are a flagship of IITE's program. Among IITE's projects, there is one in collaboration with Shanghai Open University with Professor Wong and his team on developing a new benchmarking of open universities and the capacity building for teachers in the digital era. We know Commonwealth of Learning and other partners are leading different projects and initiatives on open universities as well. Therefore, I hope this session is not just an opportunity for exchanging new ideas and experience, but also an opportunity for strengthening partnership and collaboration among us. Dear colleagues, we are living in a time of rapid change and a world with unprecedented challenges, including the pandemic. Higher education must transform itself, must lead the transformation of entire education system in order to meet the new demands and new challenges. While Open University has a unique role and expectedly a leading role to play in this transformative process. This is because Open Universities are pioneers of distance and online learning. And eventually, all universities will go open and digital to become open universities in the digital era. And this is the future of higher education. I wish a very inspiring and successful session led by Professor Asha. Over to you, Professor Asha.
Thank you, Tao. That was short and sweet. Now let me invite the first panelist, Professor Wong Hong from Shanghai Open University.
Okay, thank you, Professor Asha. I'll share my PPT.
It's all ready. I think they've got it all here. So they'll...
Can you watch my PPT?
It's coming on.
Oh, okay. Can I start? Can I start? Okay.
The technical team is getting it on the screen.
Yeah,
that's the one, Shanghai Open University.
Okay.
我看到你没有打开你的那个文件。
Yeah， 我已经是共享了嘛，还没共享。
共享了，但没有打开文件，看到你的屏幕了 ，sorry。
OK。这个文件的打开，这个就没有了，符号没有了。It's not.
He needs to open.
Yeah, just open the PowerPoint.
Sharing the. Yeah, he's trying to find the right file, the right document.
Okay, I can't see my.
Prof, can you open your PowerPoint and share the slides? Once you do that, then they'll take it on from here.
We can't see your.
You mean me?
We need to see your screen, so please share your slides.
OK， 我也看不到那个。
啊，
最下面。
下面没有了。
可以了，你已经打开了，再打开一下，已经对。在你最右边下面不是有个 PowerPoint P， 你点那个有一个绿色。
就是那个红的带红字的，
就是这个。
OK。
It's here. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem, Prof. We can see it now.
I will stay on time. Dear moderator, Professor Asha, dear director, Professor Zhang, and everyone. I appreciate to have a chance to attend this session. My speech topic is open education, better transformation. Three themes to be discussed. How to understand open, how to construct open, how to develop open. Here, part one, how to understand open. It includes three hands. First hand, open to object. Open education fits for the learning needs, diversified groups, especially focus on the working group and the disadvantaged group. Second hand, open to teaching. Open education is adaptive for various teaching forms with flexibility in time, venues, and platforms. Third hand, open to evaluation, open education. Adopt multi-dimensional outcome standards especially for non-formed and informed learners. Here shows SOU new functional features of open education. Number one, serving everyone. It includes provides education opportunities for all learners, registered enrollment, resident learning, mutual recognition of different credits. Number two, centered in learners. It includes various patterns of education, abundant course resources, personalized evaluation. Number three, no boundary. It includes online and offline blended learning, open and flexible pedagogy system, AI and big data service. Here, part two, how to construct open. First, create adaptive modules based on learning needs of different groups. Shanghai is a mega city, faces to number one, open governance and community service, needs adaptive labor workforce. Number two, a great number of migrant workers call for degree upgrading and skills training. Number three, a deep aging population leads to demand of domestic workers, etc. Here shows SOU adaptive module constructing open education. There are three parts of modules. I don't introduce exactly. You can see picture. Secondary, build up a support system, smart teaching and learning. Number one, any online platform for all teachers and students. Number two, a mobile learning app for flexible studying. Number three, some smart classrooms and big data services. Here shows SOU integration of IT and education. There are four parts of integration. Integration of teaching forms, online and on-site learning. Integration of teaching venues in the classroom and by recording. Integration of platforms, PCs and mobile apps. Integration of data, analysis of behavior and process. Thirdly, effective connection and conversation between all forms of learning outcomes. First, recognition of learning outcomes with other higher education. Number two, conversion with professional qualification certificates. Number three, linkage with career achievements. Here shows Shanghai Credit Bank homepage. It's a homepage. A service for supported recognition, accumulation, and exchange of various forms of learning outcomes. Up to now, around 90,000 people can conversation of learning and conclusion. But the bottom of state is Greater Bank website. I don't say anything exactly. You can look around after conference. Here, part three, how to develop open. It includes three directions. First direction, develop open educational specialties distinct from other universities. Second direction, develop feature evaluation indicators based on open learning. Third direction, develop successful open transformation, return to the essence of universities, perfect quality, expand capacity, and promote achievement. I think this this point is the best important. At last, I will come to conclusion. The 5th International Conference on Learning Cities, Shanghai, was conferred UNESCO Learning City Award 2021. As an open university in a global learning city, SOU were actually developing concepts of, first, serve as the important resource of constructing learning society and city. Secondly, serving as the main foundation of building up a lifelong learning system. Thirdly, serving as a solid base for improving literacy and obtaining sustainable happiness. That's all my speech. Thanks. Thanks, the moderator, Asha.
Prof. Wong, thanks a lot. That was nice and short and very, very insightful. You've talked about how open universities can help the transformation of higher education. And one of the things that higher education can learn is more openness and flexibility, more emphasis on blended approaches, more emphasis on lifelong learning. So I think all that is very helpful. We go to the next speaker. What we'll do is we'll get all the speakers first, then I'll ask some questions. And that's how, then we will ask the audience if they have any questions. Does anybody have a question for Professor Wong here in the room?
Oh, okay. Please, can I answer your question?
现在还没有提问。
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm Bishwajit Kumar, Director in the Ministry of Education, India. Just now, Professor Wong told about the credit bank. Just wanted to know the credit transfer mechanism, what kind of credit transfer mechanism they are having. Only it is among the open universities courses, or it is between the open university and also the conventional universities. So that is my question.
Prof. Wong?
我想他问你那个 credit bank 是在哪些学校之间交流，交换这些。
Okay. In Shanghai, all university exchange credit, include Shanghai Open University and other university exchange and recognition of students' credit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof. The next one is Professor Santosh Panda. Prof. Panda, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
So is your presentation here, or are you going to share your screen?
No, just speaking like that.
Oh, good. Even better.
So, friends, good evening from Delhi, India. Respected Chair, Professor Asha Kanwarji, Director UNESCO, Professor Tao, our dear colleagues. I've been almost 16 times to China, 4 times Shanghai when our good friend Zhang Deming was there as Vice Chancellor, and 4 times to UNISA and 4 times to now. Professor Abdullah, sir, very nice to see you again. Our good friend Veronica, Professor Joseph. I'll just present a brief case from India based on the 4 or 5 questions that were raised. India is the 2nd largest higher education system and the 2nd largest distance learning system in the world. We have now 1,043 universities, more than 54,000 colleges, including standalone institutions, about 39 million students and about 15 million teachers. The open distance learning, as the Professor Kanwar rightly said, 19 open universities, but now autonomous colleges being allowed to offer online programs, and those with national higher education ranking framework, almost 100 top universities have been allowed. All put together, more than 1,000 institutions are now offering distance education programs. Distance learning has got almost 4.2 million students, which is about 11% of the entire higher education students in the country. If you talk about access and equity, higher education, almost 49% of women, distance learning 42, or less. And all disadvantages put together, we have a caste system, minorities, disabled, all put together, 66% of disadvantaged students in the formal system, about 65 in distance learning. Today, we have a GER, gross enrollment ratio of 27%, with the new education, National Education Policy 2020, which is a game changer. It's also promises by 2035 to increase these to 50%. The National Education Policy has far-reaching reforms and talks about outcome-based learning and employability. It talks about blended higher education, both formal and distance education put together, multidisciplinarity, employability, skilling, multiple entry and exit, credit transfer, cross-border delivery, credit transfer. And almost 1,000 plus international universities have been now considered any time they'll be allowed to enter the Indian soil to offer their programs. So also Indian universities going abroad. I must note that there has been a tremendous expansion. When 1962, we started correspondence education with the Russian model. The erstwhile Soviet Union model we started. We got into open distance learning with the British Open University model. And now we are into online learning with an edX linear model, I would say, that we have a national SOAM platform in the country. Anybody can join in. About 40% of the credits, student credits, can be taken by any institution, and there can be credit transfer. So that would simply mean that 40% today in conventional higher education is distance learning or online learning. So no degree today in the country is full-time face-to-face, provided the students agree and their institution statutory bodies allow them to go for 40% credit transfer. Distance education is a second choice. Of course, it's a second choice. That was first question. But now it is gradually changing to a first choice with due to changing employment structure, labor market, and especially the diversified student interest. The younger students are now entering distance education. Otherwise, to start with, 1982, when we started the state open, provincial open university, in 1985, my national open university by the Act of Parliament, we still report to the Parliament even till date. At that time, it was continuing education largely and continuing professional development, lifelong learning. And today, for the first degree, students are providing a first choice, giving a first choice to the National Open University and 18 state open universities and some of the dual mode universities. Yes, distance education has contributed significantly in some areas. I outlined 3 or 4 areas that distance education has contributed. One is that the development of diversified programs, because the kinds of programs that we're offering, which are developmental, which are developmental programs, continuing education programs, national human resource development programs, programs in regional languages for women and disadvantaged, including, say, a very, very diversified program, nationwide program is local self-governance. Now, the cluster of villages, the power has been shifted to democratically to those elected people to run their system locally. So therefore, the professional development for the local self-governance was done by the National Open University. It was a very huge project. And today there is a huge project by the government of India that the entire skilling in the country, professional development, just a few months back has been given to the National Open University. So also National Education Policy 2020, about 15 lakh or 1.5 million students. National Open University, my university has been given, and myself the coordinator, to train 1.5 million teachers within new National Education Policy to be implemented. This is one area, diversified programs and courses which are not available in the conventional university. 2, that curriculum and instructional design reforms, obviously the National Open University, State Open Universities, even dual mode universities are better placed in curriculum and instructional design and pedagogy, which the formal university system has to gradually adopt with the national education policy talking about blended learning for all the entire higher education and further education and vocational education and training. And therefore, we have a responsibility to play a lead role to contribute to curriculum and instructional design and pedagogy of teaching and learning. ICT and blended learning, we are the lead, keeping aside the 2 years of COVID, Zooming, Googling, all kinds of things. Everybody was going, starting from school to university. But besides that, many universities are now coming forward, conventional universities, to go for online learning and blended learning, combining with open distance learning and hands-on skill development face-to-face. These three combined together, now the open universities are better placed to lead that. In fact, they are leading with the national education policy in place. As I said, 40% of credit accumulation is possible today. And the national education policy has given more emphasis for private players and international players to come into higher education. There is now a joint degree program in place, which will be operational very soon. And we had a national skill qualifications framework starting from schooling up to a doctoral level, and internationally competitive skilling rubric, possible indicators there, which is being implemented nationally for quite some time now, more than 10 years. We have a Ministry of Skilling and Entrepreneurship in the country. And now the same minister being the Minister for Skilling as well as Minister for Education, it is becoming now compatible and easy. And therefore, the apex regulator, the University Grants Commission, has come up with the National Higher Education Qualifications Framework, which is under discussion right now, which will be finalized hopefully by the end of this month, which will be compatible with the National Skill Qualifications Framework. And once it is done, there will be a vertical and horizontal mobility between the skilling sector as well as the general higher education sector. And in between, there is a professional education of engineering, medicine, and so on, pharmaceutical, and so on and so forth. Given these, I must underline that the Indian government is certainly committed to the SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4 of the United Nations, inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning for all. And distance learning is being considered not only to increase the GER up to 50% by 2035, but also contribute to inclusive, equitable quality education for all. Now, let me address those 4 or 5 questions that were put up next 2 minutes. New policy framework needed, yes. Since we have a new National Education Policy 2020, what I feel that 2 important policies need to be in place. One is a national policy on blended learning, and certainly a national policy on OER. These 2 are essential, which are being considered by the government, and we should come up very soon. But these are recommendations that I'm making that this should come up as fast as possible. Scaling up and roll up technology, yes. Flexible credit transfer is in place now. And national, what I'm submitting is that there is a need for, besides the SOAM national online platform, which is more linear in pedagogy based on the edX platform, which needs to get into kind of Moodle platform that we are offering and getting national awards, by the way. And Dr. Misra, who is present here, would vouch for that. He initiated that, we have taken forward, and we got the National President of India Best Award for this pedagogic-based Moodle program. I understand that the government has provided flexibility in the national policy for institutions to go for their own platforms. And there is a national platform for quadrant platform available as well. But what I'm submitting is that most probably, and hopefully that will come up, that we will need a national grid for online learning, or a network or a platform for online learning that the institutions can share. This is a second recommendation that I'm making. Graduate employability, this is a very serious concern. And right now, we had skill-based courses, but they were not compatible with the National Skill Qualifications Framework. Therefore, the point that is coming up this month of May is that since National Higher Education Qualifications Framework is under discussion, which is directly compatible to National Skill Qualifications Framework, that will facilitate integrating skills into the curriculum. micro-credential skill courses to add value to diversified areas of study and employment in the job market, and partnership with industry for curriculum and internship. This is what is coming out. And now every curriculum, every course of study, or every program of study is being divided compulsorily into theory, practicum, and internship. Internship is becoming compulsory right now, which is under a plan of action to be implemented in the country. The pandemic learning to scale up, yes, there is a need for integrating technology compulsorily for curriculum, teaching learning, especially learner support. Learner support is very important, that even if you are teaching face-to-face or through distance learning, an online learner support is becoming very useful to the learners. And therefore, online learner support should be made compulsory. That's another recommendation which should be considered as part of the government policy. Continuing professional development and teachers and institution leaders, which is coming up. The Commonwealth, I must recommend that the Commonwealth of Learning Change Management Strategy, which is a policy technology capacity building. I think that is a strategy which needs to be taken forward and integrated within national policies. Women, especially, I'm suggesting that there is a need for a more need-based and skill-based courses for women and other disadvantaged groups, including disabled groups. I'm also submitting that there is a need that the research best practices internationally could also be adapted into local implementation at the regional and local level. And that is what is needed to build into the curriculum, teaching, learning, technology, level support, and also assessment and evaluation. Assessment and examinations should be reformed, I must say, because the open distance learning system is much behind the formal, some of the best formal. I know the Tsinghua University I visited, I was a visiting professor in Beijing Normal University quite a few times, and the way Tsinghua University doing, or for instance, the way our Indian Institutes of Technology and Indian Institute of Management are doing, they're much ahead in their assessment strategies, very diversified, very formative, and so on and so forth. I think there is a need for open distance learning to get into more formative. I'm submitting that the assessment for learning and formative is more important. Assessment as diverse 21st century skills, including e-portfolios, technology-based assessment, skill assessment, cases and scenarios, problem-based learning, project-based learning, these need to come forward to distance learning, which is not the case because it's becoming difficult to deal with these assessment strategies in open distance learning context. And therefore, online learning, distance learning, face-to-face joining together as a national strategy for blended learning, now there is a need to bring in the best practices of face-to-face assessment strategies to open and distance learning. I think I should stop here. If there are any questions, I would love to address them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Panda. I think one of the main points which came out of your talk was that it's not enough to give access to education. We must also provide opportunities for livelihoods. And the question is that, are we producing employable graduates? And the question is that, are we skilling people in the right direction? And what you said, that the government is trying to create those qualifications frameworks, I think is really a good step in the right direction. And I hope that will make a difference. And the graduates that we produce will be employable and will have access to livelihoods. Thanks a lot, Prof. Let me now ask Professor Adamu. Professor Adamu?
Yeah.
Where are you? We haven't seen you.
I'm here.
There you are.
Right
there you
here.
are. Very much there. So do you have a PowerPoint or are you just speaking?
No, I will talk to my presentation because it's only about 10 minutes. I don't want to go to piddling around trying to load up things and taking up more time.
Good.
Am I good to go?
Go ahead, sir.
All right.
Please go on.
Yeah, what I have been asked to talk about, or what I want to talk about, is the innovation that emerged at the National Open University of Nigeria during the pandemic, whether they were scalable or not, and to the extent to which some of our innovation reached the unreached. First of all, let me thank you, Professor Asha Kanwar, for inviting me into this panel. I would like to also say hello to my colleagues, whom I'm seeing some for the very first time. It's good to be here. It's good to be together. I hope we'll be able to network after this in subsequent arrangements. National Open University of Nigeria is located in Nigeria, and currently they have about 650,000 students. That made them the largest university in Africa in terms of number of students. Nigeria is an extremely diverse country with over 500 languages, and therefore, technically speaking, we have over 500 ethnicities and nationalities, and that is not without its own basic problems. National Open University of Nigeria caters for all, and it is spread throughout the country in all the 36 states of the country. During the pandemic lockdown, we faced a critical problem. As a vice chancellor, I was actually queried by the minister to inform the minister and the nation about what I intend to do about examination during the pandemic lockdown. And the answer was there was not much I can do because everywhere was locked down. There are no spaces, people are not allowed to move. So what can I do? Then we sat down online and came up with an idea of three choices. We have three choices. Basically, what we faced was an examination that was looming out. We had wanted to do the examination on 3rd June 2020, but the pandemic lockdown made it absolutely impossible to hold it on that date, and students started agitating. As the Vice Chancellor of National Open University, I've been taken to court. I've been sued many times by students, either because their results are missing, or because they have paid the money, but the money has not dropped into our wallet, and therefore they have been blocked from taking an examination. I've been all sorts of problems. So it's a very, very hot seat. And the students started agitating for examination, claiming that they have already paid for the examination and therefore they have to take the exam. So we had three options. Option number one was to cancel the examination. Option number two was to shift the examination forward to a time when there was no lockdown. And option number three was to create a new format. We decided to go for option number three because to us, it is anachronistic that an online university is insisting on a page-to-page examination. If we are truly online, then we shall find a way of making sure that we also examine students online. So we decided to experiment with proctoring software, which we used from a company. And the MPAS proctoring software was what we used. Now, the proctoring software enables you to monitor examinations remotely from wherever the students are. And we know that this is a very, very expensive process. And it is the first time it has been tried in the country. So we decided to ask the students if they are willing to do their examinations through proctoring software. All we required are three things. Number one, they must be willing to pay for it. Number two, they must have a laptop with internet connections and Wi-Fi. Number three, they must be in an isolated environment. When we say isolated, we don't mean mountaintop or anywhere. It means somewhere in a room where there is no one around you, nobody will see you, and nobody will interact with you. And when we ask the students to determine if they want to do it, about 9,000 students agreed to do it. They said they will do it. But in the end, only 5,000 paid to do it. Now, several factors were taken into consideration when we want to do this implementation of the proctoring software. First, equitable access. Students are given the chance to take the examination if they want to do it. It's not compulsory, it's not forcible. You want to do it, you pay for it, and you do it. Number two, we have to create a new format for the content to fit into the online proctoring software space. Number three, we have to create a technical facility whereby we're able to upload the questions in a particular format that the students can easily have access to. And number four, there has to be examination integrity. Just because something is done online does not mean that it has to be different from something that is done offline. It has to be, we have to have examination integrity. And number five, the grading and the examination and the grading also must be done online. In other words, no piece of paper anywhere. So we implemented it, and it's very interesting, the results, which I have somewhere, but I'm not sharing. I just simply want to explain the results. We had a total of 919 examination malpractices. And the reason is because the students believe that just because there is no one looking at you, you can do whatever you like, not knowing that the proctoring software uses artificial intelligence to monitor the environment of the students. So if there is someone close to you, the software will tell us. If there is someone about to give you information, again, the software will inform us. But the most interesting thing is blocking camera to darken the screen, leaving seat while examination is in progress, face not clearly visible, were the most common cheating that the students engaged in. About 443, actually, students tried to block the camera so that nobody can see what they are doing. And we found that very, very interesting. So they get spooked. One will tell them, oi, unblock the camera. You know, you're blocking the camera because we can interact with them. So they tend to get a little bit weird and scared because it's something like a voice from space coming and telling you to stop cheating. Don't do anything that is against the examination process. So eventually the examination was over and we disciplined those who cheated. The scripts were electronically sent to the tutors and the tutors marked. I was one of those who marked. Even though I was a vice chancellor, I insisted on doing that. This was the first time we have done that in the country. And it was successful as far as we are concerned. It was very, very expensive. And the students wanted us to continue with that process. But at that time, we said, let's simply stop for now. Let's re-strategize. Let's recollect ourselves and look at the process all over again and see how we can make it better next time. So as far as scalability is concerned, yes. I have left the university, but I'm made to understand that they are thinking of doing similar things because many of the students.
You're frozen. Prof, you're frozen. Maybe you can just switch the video and go on with the audio. We seem to have lost Professor Adamu because he was telling us very interesting things about the kind of exams he conducted during the pandemic. But I think we'll go on to Professor Veronica Mackay. Prof, can you hear me? Veronica?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear as well.
Okay. And
do you have a presentation or are you just going?
Yes. If you don't mind, I will use a presentation. I just want to upload it, share my screen, and it's this one. And I want to go to the start. Sorry about that. There we are. And I want to put it in slideshow.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Asha, and good afternoon to everybody. It's afternoon where I am in South Africa, and I'm Veronica.
I'm sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Prof, we lost you. Will you come back again later? Now Veronica started her presentation.
Am I still on?
Do you want me to go?
You know, Prof.
Yeah. It's about to rain here, so the internet is a little bit wobbly. Am I still on?
Yeah, well, if you can just close up in the next 1 minute.
Yeah, I can do that because I still have about 1 minute, yes. Well, that was about our proctoring software. And finally, reaching the unreached. One of the innovation that we decided to do was to create audio books. Now, using Microsoft's inbuilt software, we can create text-to-speech audiobook for students who are hard of hearing, who are blind. But then we discovered that students who are sighted also prefer to have audiobooks because they get intimidated by the amount of material that they have to read for their courses, and they find it easier to listen. After all, they listen to music a lot. And we find that the Microsoft strategy, that is a text-to-speech strategy in Microsoft, uses American accent. And many people in Nigeria don't really understand that particular accent. But the problem we face is that if we use a Nigerian accent, we have to use it from a different part of the country, and people from other part of the country will not accept it. So, but luckily there is a company called Narakid that now provides an accented Nigerian English accent, which will enable us to convert all the study materials into audiobooks for everyone. So these are some of the innovations that we did: proctoring examination and audiobook production for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So those are some of the innovations that National Open University of Nigeria did, and it's inspiring to see how, crisis generates creativity. Now we come back to you, Veronica. Thank you for your patience. And we can see you on screen. I mean, your PowerPoint.
Okay, good. Thank you, Asha, and thank you to my colleagues. So I'll move on now. I hope the slide is going to change. There we are. To talk about a study that was commissioned by Prof. Asha, looking at the 26 public universities in South Africa and looking at how they transitioned due to the COVID pandemic and the emergency. And I've marked the universities on the slide, on the map, just to show how they clustered. And so just the clustering alone talks to access for students and to participation for students. And you can see that they clustered in the larger metropolitan areas. So the study used an online survey, a questionnaire with open and closed questions, which was very useful to get the ideas from the respondents at the university. And I pitched them at DVC level because at that time I was DVC, and I pitched it at that level so that we got good responses from people who were driving the transition. And then we did a very comprehensive desk study for this exploration, looking at the legal situation and in the situation of the NEETs, those young people not in education training and so on. We looked at university enrollment rates and also at internet penetration across the countries. So, yeah, what did we find with our study? We found initially there were a lot of problems. And we conducted the study at the beginning of this year, in January this year, and most of those problems had more or less been ironed out. So when initially we had a lot of complaints, in my own university we had complaints, but by 2022, by January this year, most of them had been ironed out. But the big ones were staff and student e-readiness, the whole lack of student analytics, because if you weren't seeing your classes in front of you, you needed that. Just as my colleague mentioned now, the whole issue of exam integrity, the students did take, we were also ready for the exams in June, Prof, and we ran them, but the whole issue of integrity was a problem. Even us at UNISA had problems, and we were accustomed to distant learning. So the big issues, devices, learning platforms, connectivity for staff and students, and the whole penetration of the internet. Only 1.2% of households in rural areas had access to the internet. It was a bit better in metropolitan and in urban areas. And to point out that almost a third of South Africans do live in rural areas where there's limited or no internet connectivity. And so this is a call to government. This is a strong call to government to address, and I call this the biggest barrier at the moment to learning. As of January 2021, 36% of South Africans remain totally unconnected. And we did have 36 million users of mobile devices. So a really big call to government. Students, once they'd adjusted, they established wonderful online communities that were very supportive. There was a lot of anxiety. There still is anxiety when students have to get onto exam platforms and they have challenges with the platform. We needed to do a whole re-socialization of students. And this was across the country. Students had to be trained, their expectations had to be managed, and they had to be re-socialized into a new way of learning. The classes of 2020 and the classes of 2021, all our universities believed, and it is showing, that they're much more tech savvy. They've had 2 years of schooling. They've had to adapt to the pandemic. And so there was a change there. Our staff experienced anxiety too. They were frontline workers in the emergency. They did progress a lot beyond the emergency. They were able to use innovation, and they did find the transition strenuous. And I think that's where COAL maybe can be assisting to help with those transitions. What we found with the survey of all the universities, overwhelmingly preference for distance modes in some way. They need to capitalize and to build on the advantages and the gains already made. There had been a rapid learning curve. A lot of investments had been made into buying ICT and platformization of universities. And many of the universities and the academics themselves prepared for this. That wasn't just a gap for or a once-off. They had prepared now for sustaining their new modes of working. Lots of innovation, bots in some places, student analytics, including our own. There was a lot of student support modalities put in place. What they liked was the awards for recognition, and we had those at UNISA, and many universities had awards for best practice. And I think, Cole, we need to really push this for universities now when we do our the Cole Awards. There was simulated pracs, and I think that's an area that Cole could be working with us on all universities. And proctoring, as Prof mentioned earlier, it was hugely expensive, and if Cole could help us with such devices, it would be helpful. And then everybody moved on to web platforms. There was some high quality and a lot of materials and a lot more sharing. I'll go through these really quickly, but basically in a country like South Africa, from the first map I showed you, that bridging the time, the geographic, the economic, and the social distances becomes critical. Most of the universities had wanted to use blended. I think blended is now the mode of preference. But hybrid has also come in, and hybrid, allowing one class to be taught with some learners participating and live and some learners online is a very good mode. And now we see HiFlex, and I think HiFlex is going to be the in thing where you can have blended or you can have hybrid with people working with you, and then also save your, so it's synchronous, but you save your class and lesson for later, if so they can work with it asynchronously as well at their own convenience. Definitely a mode of choice. We found that access had, this opens many opportunities for access, and we do. UNISA already does have a third of the country's higher education students. But the youth bulge, the growing numbers of youth, the needs that are not in school, the people who need to be retrained for new job functions, women, people with disabilities, and those who are geographically far, and the map shows that many are geographically just out of reach, need to be brought into the system. We found it to be efficient, and we found in terms of throughput and retention that it was efficient, that the rates hadn't changed. In fact, in some cases they'd gone up, but we're waiting still for, at this time of the study, we were waiting still for DHET to audit the rates, but we had found better retention and better pass rates in some areas. Equity depended on economic status, again, because of the cost of data bundles, and I call this the new barrier to learning. Inclusivity, in many cases, it improved for women and for learners with special needs and for learners who couldn't ordinarily get to campuses. And quality is reliant on us all getting our materials together and probably working together on those. Costing, I won't go into it, but there are three main ways of costing: subsidy from government, income from fees, and third stream income from donations, and so on. We found within a university, there was differences if they were using distance education, it was cheaper. And between universities, those who were using distance programs, their costs to students was considerably lower. We also found efficiency ratios, difficult, but to work with because retention and throughput come into it, but we did find better efficiencies. Recommendations, and this is where I want to agree with both my colleagues who worked on the study, we do need to scale up. and we need to optimize on progress. The country has made immense progress. The call is for one student, one laptop. And with that, we do need student advocacy and training. I think this baby belongs to all the ministries. I don't think this is only a Ministry of Education baby. This child needs to be looked after and supported interministerially, including, for example, finances, where we see there's huge surcharges on devices. I could buy a device in UK for half the cost that it would cost me to buy the same device in South Africa. And the same goes for books. And this is a structural barrier for the poor, and it needs to go. Affordable connectivity is also one that will ensure inclusiveness. We have an NQF in place. It does lend itself to micro-credentialing. It does lend itself to RPL. We need to push. That is an area that needs a great big push. We also need instruments for, I know there are, and indexes for country readiness. We need a competition for countries because we do need countries to, this becomes a national problem, not just a problem of the education sector. And within our own spaces, CPD for staff, but also for support staff, because they need to support students online, and we need to look at that and see how we can improve the support that they do give to students. And then, as my colleagues mentioned, MOOCs and OERs will leapfrog the progress. And Madam Chair, I end here. The way is clearly towards ODL, and I want to thank you for the time. Thank you so much, Asha.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you so much. And all the kind of interesting findings from your studies. And now we come to the final speaker, Professor Joseph Duarte.
Thank you very much, Professor Asha. Let me start just saying thank you to the people who invited me to stay here in this conference. Of course, the president of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies for Education, located in Moscow, Professor Tao Zhan, and also Professor Svetlana Niaseva. I'm professor of the Open University of Catalonia, which is located here in Barcelona. I'm so happy to stay in this conference, and I hope that you are enjoying our city. This university, the Open University, was created 25 years ago here in Barcelona from scratch as a virtual university. And we consider that we are the first virtual university in the world. At this moment, we have around 70,000 students. We teach in Catalan, in Spanish, and a few courses in English. And I'm talking also from my experience as a 25 years professor and also researcher in this university. And also now I'm a president of EDEN. EDEN Digital Learning Europe is one of the largest communities and networks here in Europe of professionals and academics. And we have also an experience from 30 years, and working as in political issues also with the European Commission here in Europe. My proposal now is just to share with you different thoughts. The first, I would like to start maybe with some comments about the things that I thought that is the contributions of the Open Universities during these last 20 years. I would like also to share with you some ideas, the things that I thought that maybe the world is changing, after the pandemic, in particular in all higher education. And to finish, also sharing some thoughts about how the Open Universities maybe can lead now in this situation and can offer also things not to the other face-to-face universities, to the universities in general. I think the contributions of the Open Universities during these last 20 years, I try to summarize in 5 only. To me, the first and the most important one of the most important is we provide educational models. I think the Open Universities show that it's possible to focus the teaching and learning process in the student and put the students in the middle. We can do that in asynchronous model as we do, or maybe in synchronous model, but I think it's one of the the main contributions. Also, we provide a lot of, during these last 20 years, high quality learning resources. And we put these learning resources online, and we are offering to everyone. And of course, we are open universities, and we put these open resources open. And I think it's a very, very important thing. I think also we show that it's possible not to, or there are a different kind of professors or teachers in these models. Not, for instance, in my university, we always talking about that we have three kind of professors. One is the author of the learning materials. It's the professor who prepare and also with a didactical approach the learning materials, but also it's the professor who works with the students in the and interact with the students in the classrooms. This is the classical, typical professor. But we have another that we call consultor, which is the person who start with the student from the beginning and finish when the student finalize his or her degree or master, not? In order to work with this student and close to him in order to avoid, for instance, dropouts, etc. And it's something that is working good, and also it's a good lesson not for the universities. And also, I think open universities demonstrated that it's possible to be massive. Not, of course, we have experience in different previous open universities in this. The professors that said with me in the speech, not, and also we are global and we have a strong experience using technologies, not, and finally, but not this is not the less important one. I think it's the most important one. Also, we show that we can offer a distance or an open or a virtual courses with a high level of quality. I think this is a very important thing. For instance, here in our country or in my university, it's a very well-reputed university, and also we are following all of the requirements from the quality assurance agencies. And I think we are very proud of that, not only for our university. I think it's very important for all open universities in the world. But of course, the pandemic changed everything during these last years, not? And I think. Let me share with you that my experience, and also according with my research, only the universities that have a strong leadership, in particular, only the universities that have a good use and a strategic use of the technologies, at the end had a good paper a role during this pandemic and after the pandemic. Not? And I think the universities learn that they have to open or go beyond their walls. They understood that it's important to be global, and the technologies and the integration of the technologies provide this possibility to be global. And also, we learn that we have to work in an equity, and we have to understand that we have a different kind of possibilities to integrate the people in the higher education systems. We also learned during the pandemic that there are so many possibilities to continuous working in the process to change the educational models. For instance, we learned a lot about flexibility, about adaptivity of this related to the needs, for instance, to the digital learnings. We learned a lot about what this means, this digital learner, not? And also we learned that it's necessary nowadays, and other people talk about that before me, is that the universities needs to be hybrid. That means we have to combine both models, the traditional open and distance model with the traditional also face-to-face model. No? And this is also a big challenge for the universities, in the sense that probably the universities also need to work or think about the challenges about the institutional management. Not, for instance, I think it's needed not to start working with different kind of professionals inside of the universities. For instance, professionals related to the ITs, but also in libraries, etc., who provide all of these resources for the students at the universities. And just to finish, let me just to comment a few thoughts about how I think the open universities can lead or can also contribute to the general higher education systems in this period for its transformation. One of the things that the open universities can provide is, of course, the way that we are working with data. As you know, in open universities, we are working with huge amounts of data, but we have to learn, and also we can provide to others how to use this data to improve the learning process of the students, and also to be close to them in order to provide the possibilities to continuous working, to continuous learning with us, and to avoid dropouts, etc. No? And we learn also that the students in this moment have a real complex trajectories. That means students, usually young students, start studying in the face-to-face universities, but sometimes when they find work, move to the online universities and maybe finish again in the face-to-face ones. And I think it's important with the data that we have from them to follow this learning process and learn from this in order to help to better implement their skills. Not? I think also we can lead and also we can contribute if we analyze all of the process to personalize learning process, in particular to adapting, as we are doing, not prior learning test or prior learning in our curriculums, and also to supporting the students and understand that the most important thing is their outcomes, but in particular for each learner, not only the general outcomes from the degrees. I think it's important to personalize these learning outcomes for each learner. Of course, everything related to digital competences, but not only for teachers, in particular for learners also. I think this is, a very important issue that we are working in open universities. And yes, another thing is lifelong learning. I think it's one of the important things that it's one of the characteristics of the open universities, not because, for instance, in our university, all of our students, or most of them, are adult people, not, but we are having now starting having young people also, not, but this idea not to collaborate in this with the students in lifelong learning, in particular focusing our learning process more on learning. That means to provide to the students learning skills instead of, for instance, content. Not, I think in this information society, to have skills for learn is the most important thing. And just to finish, one of the things that I think the open universities can provide is research about all of these educational models and how these digital learners learn, and how maybe new uses of technology, new kind of innovations. We are doing that in our universities, and I think we can also contribute to the higher education system with these innovations. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joseph Duarte. I think the point which you raised is very important, that when we have to convince people that open universities have something to share, they ask for evidence. So do we have evidence, solid, hard data and evidence to tell them that this works and this doesn't work? So I think that's a very important point. So everybody has been very disciplined. Can we get all the speakers on the screen, please? Oh, good. So we've got everybody on the screen now, except our rapporteurs. I'm sure the audience would like to see them. Do we have any questions for any of the speakers here in the room? I don't see any hands. So then let me go ahead and ask them some questions. The first one to you, Prof. Adamo. In which ways do you think current systems of education need to change? I mean, immediately what needs to change and what needs to change in the long term? Prof. Adamo?
Attitude needs to change. There is still an ambivalent attitude towards distance education in Africa. People in Africa prefer to have a face-to-face interaction with people because that's how they feel they can learn. The whole idea of learning on your own and online is still new, and those attitudes need to be changed. So that means that often universities in Africa need to do a lot in order to draw people into accepting that the world is changing and that online is the best way to go. The whole idea of face-to-face is out of the question. National Open University of Nigeria is gradually towards moving to that particular level. So attitudes need to be changed. Government also attitude needs to be changed because government attitude is the same as societal attitude. And that means there is not enough funding for us to really embark truly on online learning. But the most important thing is this traditional feeling that for you to learn, you have to be in front of a guru, in front of a master, you have to learn in front of someone. The whole idea of learning on your own doesn't seem to be right for many people here. So we need to change those attitudes.
I think that's an excellent point, Prof. I think it's a question of perception that this is second rate, second chance, and I think that needs to change. Let me come to you, Professor Wong Hong. Did increased access during COVID-19 diminish inequality?
Thank you for moderated question. Sure, I think so. In general, increased online learning has indeed contributed to more equality during the pandemic. Teachers can give lessons a wide range of quantities online. Students can choose and share course resources offered by many teachers and can also discuss their homework each other equally online anytime. However, there's also some students to meet difficulties. For example, maybe with no computer herself, or no Wi-Fi network at home, or expensive data fee, etc. So moreover, it's necessary to find a suitable way to help these learners to learn successfully and fittingly at home. That's my simple answer. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof. Thanks, Prof. Veronica, what strategy, I know UNISA does this, but what strategy do we have for including persons with disabilities?
Okay, what we found now, having moved to online, was that students with disabilities were able, as Prof. Adama spoke about, to use sort of audio, text, audio, and so this made it much, much easier for our students. When there were online classes, we used sign language interpreters for students who, because UNISA, as you know, was reaching close to 400,000 students. So we tried to build in sign interpretation or to have the text run with a particular lecture. And for students who are blind or visually challenged, the online devices, if they had them, it helped them considerably, because in the past we were having to put a lot of materials into Braille. We still continued with Braille and to deliver Braille textbooks and so on. But students were able to get hold of the PDFs, and they were able to use the voice medium as a way of bridging. But yeah, students with especially hearing impaired and visually impaired, we were able to cater for them. And we didn't, with the examinations, we gave them 15 minutes per hour extra, and they could respond using the typed mode on their computers.
Thank you, Veronica. I think there's a question for you.
Thank you. Here in the conference these days, we have heard about the importance of face-to-face education, and we heard that there is only university when there is presence. How can we construct the bridge between these two worlds, the open universities, that the learners that we have as digital universities to facilitate the digitization of the universities in this post-pandemic world, and in some ways give continuity to the all the lessons learned during the pandemic by the universities, face-to-face universities. I think it's terrible to hear that it's only university when and university life when there is face-to-face interactivity, and we have to construct some bridges between these two worlds. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Exactly, Prof. Yes.
Yes, I think the bridge is built, not I think in particular after the pandemic, not. But I don't agree with this idea, not because, for instance, we are an open university from the beginning, and we have students, we have a life in our campus, and the students feel as members of a community. That means it's possible to build a community, a virtual community, a real virtual community, no? And I think we are also a university. That means it's true, no? And the bridge, I think it's here, and after pandemic, it's clear, not all of the universities in this world had nowadays experience about what does it mean to use this technology to teach, not? And I think one of the questions, the most important challenges that I think we have now related to education, it's blended, not? It's blended learning or hybrid learning, not? That means how we can combine the best of these two worlds, not? But to do that, of course, we need to rethink the way that we are teaching, in particular from the face-to-face universities, because it's not just to use Zoom or Teams or this kind of platforms, not to teach as the same way that we did before, not? I think we need to rethink the curriculums, we need to rethink the way that we are teaching, and the way is that. This is my opinion.
Thank you, Prof. So my next question is to you, Prof, since you are in speaking mode right now. What kind of enabling policies will be required in a post-COVID world to promote blended and online learning?
I think it's the same that I saw now. Not?
What you just explained.
Yes, I said, not. But yes, it's this idea not about hybrid or blended learning. I think it's the most challenging thing in this moment. But I insist, I mentioned in my short speech, not maybe also we need particular professionals at the universities, at the face-to-face universities, and also in the online universities that help professors and also students not to learn better, not to use their skills and to provide them skills in order to use correctly these two worlds. Not? For instance, in our university also, we started as an asynchronous model, not? But now, after the pandemic, we are starting to have some synchronous moments, not? Because the technology changed, and also we explore not that possibilities. And I think it's just to be open, not to adapt everything.
So open policies is what we need. Thank you. Last question to Professor Panda. How can open universities better collaborate? Because I think collaboration is important. This is a lesson from the pandemic, to lead the transformation of higher education. Where is Professor Panda? Oh, there.
I think we already have collaborations in place, but I think what is, as Professor Abdullah rightly pointed out, that it is also a question of parity of esteem. But also, I think it is a question of seamless, flexible credit transfer between vocational education and training and higher education generally, as also between conventional as well as distance, as well as hybrid or whatever modes of learning. I think if that is established, collaboration will be much easier. We can then give and take. So this is within the country. Outside the country, I think collaboration will be much more need-based, and therefore we can identify our own strengths, and therefore freely, open education resource is one of them, MOOC is one of them, and the micro-credential as a Commonwealth of Learning is bringing in. I understand my university has done an MOU with that, but that should be freely moving. So I think give and take, something in an open process would be leading to more collaboration besides our own individual institutional interest and national interests. So flexibility and seamless credit transfer, recognition of credits between institutions and between vocational and general. I think that is a very, very stumbling block to collaboration. That has been my experience so far.
Thank you, Prof. Now, one quick word from Svetlana, and then Sanjay, and then Tao. Svetlana, I wish you all were here rather than on the screen, but never mind.
Okay, so well, I would like to greet everybody and congratulate on the very interesting exchange. Well, I've been dealing with the open education already for more than a decade, and actually I've learned a lot, in particular the experience, the lessons learned from the recent pandemic. So we will summarize all the results, and we look forward to further collaboration with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. Sanjay?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think this panel has really highlighted the importance of role of open universities. Particularly, panel members have talked about innovations, what kind of innovations happened during the pandemic, the openness of what kind of openness and open education should be done in higher education as such, the issue of quality, issue of parity of open education, the assessment processes, building community of practice in digital world, all those wide variety of top areas that has come out in this panel discussion are definitely useful for higher education in general. And open universities have been doing some of this, which has been done at a massive more scale by other institutions during the pandemic. And therefore, open universities are in a position to really help guide the transition to open distance online learning for other institutions around the world. And I hope open universities will lead the future of education. And as Svetlana said, we'll be summarizing the discussions and the deliberations today, and we'll be sharing this at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Tao?
Thank you, Professor Asha. I just want to say I learned a lot. I'm enjoying listening to the different ideas and experience. I just want to add to make a proposal to Professor Asha. Maybe in the future, CO could further lead together with UNESCO and other partners in the further research and practice in this area, focusing on open universities in transforming higher education. I'm ready to join and to work together with you and other partners presenting today. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tao. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tao, for being a partner with us in organizing this, and to Svetlana, who's worked very, very hard, to Prof. Joseph for being here so that I wasn't sitting all by myself, Professor Wong Hong, Professor Santosh Panda, Professor Abdullah Adamu, Professor Veronica Mackay. Thank you all, and Svetlana and my colleague Sanjay, thanks so much for being here. But just, we've got 1 minute exactly, so just I'll use that 1 minute to sum up that open and distance learning has always been a disruptive innovation. If you use Clayton Christensen's term, I mean, he uses it for business, but open and distance learning has been a disruptive innovation. If we want to transform higher education, we need more disruptive innovations. Business as usual will not work. The second point is that the future is blended. So we need these distinctions between distance, hybrid, online, etc., to disappear. So there has to be a convergence of all modes, and ultimately what matters is the outcome rather than how you got the degree. And the third point is that there cannot be any quality without equity and inclusion. So with that, let me thank the audience, and let me thank our panelists once more. I really wish you all were here, but we shall meet. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye,
Professor.
Mr. Tan.
Thank you. That
Nice
was
to
great.
see you.
That was good.
Andrea.
Thank you.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye, Veronica. Bye. 再见。
再见。